Let me open up by thanking everyone who's connected. This is the third episode of our Renaissance series that focuses on sustainable human development, where we kind of combined the whole issue of sustainability with the topic of post-Brexit, the topic of post-COVID, and we try to provide as a chamber for our members at an individual level, as opposed to a corporate level, some tools and some food for thought on how all of us can better adapt to the new challenges and the new opportunities that come up following these huge changes that we have lived in over the past couple of years. Now, this episode is focusing on British mindset, and for this, counterintuitively, we have decided to reach out to someone who's not British, but somebody who knows very much about British mindset and about intercultural relations, as she's a very qualified executive coach and with specific experience on interculturalism. But I will let Elisabeth, whom I thank very much for leading us in this discovery of what British mindset is today, to tell us more. It's going to be a very informal moment, but having participated in other events organized with Elisabeth, I know it's going to be quite enriching and quite stimulating for all of us attending. So thank you, and take it away.
Thank you, Aaron. Hello to everyone. Fantastic to see you, those of you who I can see. I have to warn you right away, this is not going to be the normal webinar where you can just sit and listen, and you can try to write some emails, but it's more fun when you actually interrupt me and talk. I hope it's going to be more conversational. So Aaron, yeah, I think you're right. Why would you ask an Austrian to talk about British values? So I have to admit, I'm not British. So I have no inside knowledge, but when we're talking about culture, not having inside knowledge is actually good, because if you want to ask a fish how the water is, the fish probably finds it very difficult to describe. And it's the same with culture, because that's normal for us. Hi, I can see John. Hi, John. So, I'm glad we have some real Brits on who can then also help us out and correct me when I'm wrong.
And check, Elisabeth. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So the main, what I've studied kind of the cultural influence on management, and have lived in Great Britain twice. So that's my claim to fame. And just recently been back there again, hunting for petrol, as everyone else was around the London area. Outside of London, it was fine. But why, would you think, is it necessary to talk about British mindset and culture? Why you're here? What do you want to get out of it? Okay, she's asking me something. I wasn't prepared for that. What's your interest in it, Mary?
Well, I'm interested, if you want to hear. I was in the UK until I was about 30. Mm-hmm. And I then left to go to South America for a number of years. And then I came to Italy 50 years ago, and I have lived here ever since. So I'm quite intrigued at the moment by the change in what I see in the British culture. It has gone flabby. It has gone weak. It has gone make a fuss about everything instead of getting on and doing it.
The famous just carry on, you feel is being lost a little bit.
I think so.
Yeah. Okay. Anyone else wants to share? What's their interest? Carl.
Been living for 5 years in the UK, and UK was quite different to many other countries I lived in. Culture very different. Some things fascinating, some other things you just scratch your head and you don't get it. And then you come up with your theories, your explanations, and the longer you live there, the more you get acquainted to it. And then I got confronted with the culture again in Italy with the British Chamber of Commerce. So I'm really interested when we talk about what's typical for the UK, for England, for British people, and how does it work?
Okay, thank you, Carl.
I'm interested, to quote the Scottish national poet, to see ourselves as others see us. So I'm interested to hear your take on it.
Okay, so it's not just my take on it. It's I'm basing myself, just to be on the safe side, also on a few anthropologists and cultural theories. Obviously, 1 hour conversation will not suffice to look at all the intricacies, as Carl said, you know, that make us scratch the face. So I've decided to kind of look at it not just from a trade relation, you know, British Chamber of Commerce point of view. One thing that's really important when we're trading, when we're doing business with other people, is to trust each other and create that trust, right? So let me share with you one way of looking at trust, because I know there are a million ideas out there on what trust is. For me, trust is a three-legged chair. Yeah, it stands on competence, reliability, and sincerity. Yeah? So we can only trust someone if they have the competence to do the task. Yeah, I can only trust my 19-year-old son with the car keys if I feel that he has had enough driving lessons and a driving license, yeah, to do that. Otherwise, I wouldn't trust him with the car keys to go driving. The same, I can only trust someone to, you know, buying a product from them or a service if I know they can deliver it. The second one is reliability. What's reliability? How would you define that?
Delivering on promises.
Delivering.
Do something, does it?
Exactly. So if I say yes, I'll do it, that I will do it. And if I say no, I won't do it, that I don't do it. People always forget the second part. Yeah. So that's statistics. Once I've started dealing with a person, I can build that statistic. And the more that person does what it says, the more reliable that person or the company comes around to me. The third part is sincerity. How do you define sincerity? How do you know someone is sincere? It's tricky, isn't it?
Non è quello che sai, ma quello che sei.
Quello che sei o quello che senti? No, sincerity is the absence of pretense. Well, if you look at the definition in the dictionary, it's the honesty of mind, the absence of deceit. So how can we judge if someone's honest and not a hypocrite? What do we go on?
Their actions.
We go on their actions.
Their results, how they deliver.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to lower the tone, but Groucho Marx said that the most important thing in business is sincerity. And if you can fake that, you've got it made. Because then, if you fake sincerity, you're a double kind of insincere. Just love it. But it's what you said, John, is super important. We go on behavior because we cannot know what's going on in people's minds and heads. So we have to judge behavior. But it's not the
actual behavior that we're judging, but how we interpret that behavior. So we observe people doing or saying something, and then we make interpretations around it. Respect. Let's use respect. How do you know that someone shows respect to you in a conversation?
If he calls you sir.
Okay, eyesight. Yeah, they look you in the eye. What else?
They listen.
They listen. Yeah. Carl?
Body language. If someone listens like this, so it's open posture.
Okay, so we have found some behavior that shows respect to us. Let's take Robin's eye. Look me in the eye. I've lived for 2 years in Thailand, and in Thailand, I show respect by not looking someone in the eye. So if I'm talking to someone who's older than me, or so, who is more senior than me, I avert eye contact. Yeah, so that's a sign of respect. Margarita said listening is a sign of respect, and we often complain about people who are interrupting us. Yeah? And that again, in some cultures, it is not necessarily a sign of disrespect. Let me share with you another slide. This interrupting each other or listening to each other is what communication scientists and sociologists call conversational turn-taking patterns. So those are patterns that we learn from very, very little onwards when we're babies, yeah, and then in kindergarten from our parents. So if a child comes to mommy and mommy's talking with auntie and the child interrupts in an Anglo-Saxon environment, the mother says, I'm sorry, I'm talking. And then we'll make an extra effort, yeah, to continue the conversation so the child learns to wait its turn. That continues in school. In many schools in the UK and in Germany and the US, Anglo-Saxon culture, you have the turning stick. So only the person who has the coin or the stick can talk. Yeah? In Brazil, where I've lived, I don't know, Henry, where you have lived in Latin America, but in Brazil, when a child comes up to two talking adults, usually both of them turn and say, oh, look, you know, Johnny or Georgia has something interesting to say. And it's involved in the conversation because Latino cultures tend to have overlapping turn-taking patterns. Also from a linguistic structure, that's fine, yeah, because they don't have split verbs. In German and in English, the verbs are split. Alex, correct me if I'm wrong. So I have to wait until the end of the sentence until I know what the verb is, yeah. And you don't have that in Latin cultures because everything that comes after the verb is decoration. So if I get interrupted, I'm not losing so much. I'm exaggerating wildly, obviously, to make a point. So now I had the opportunity to work in schools in the American school in Sao Paulo. And when Brazilian teachers were evaluated, their classrooms were always evaluated as chaotic because pretty much everyone was allowed to talk and to say their thing. They didn't have to wait their turn so much because interaction was expected. You had to show up in the conversation. Yeah. So how do you think Anglo-Saxons with their non-interrupting turn-taking patterns view Latino turn-taking patterns, aficionados?
I found the first time that I was addressing colleagues when I was not the boss, I was rather shocked by the way the women in particular all talked at the same time, which I found disconcerting and discourteous.
Okay, so Anglo-Saxons, as Henry just said, tend to then view that as disconcerting, as discourteous, as disrespectful. Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you think Latinos view Anglo-Saxon turn-taking patterns?
It's a bit stuffy.
That's the kind version of it, Henry. Too rigid, yeah? Non-interested, not passionate. Sometimes I get complaints that, you know, from people in joint ventures or kind of projects that work together, that Brits are just not interested. They don't care because they're not participating. They're not actively involved in the conversation. Now, when you ask them why is that, they can't tell you because no one says, oh, that's interesting. Look at the Brazilians or the Italians. They have an overlapping turn-taking pattern. That's not what people say. What they say is they're interrupting. They're discourteous. They're rude. Huh? And the others don't say, oh, look, how interesting. You know, they have a bordering turn-taking pattern. So, you know, that's just their turn-taking pattern. It's not that they're boring, stuffy, not interested. Yeah. And that's why we need to talk about culture, because understanding, as I said, sincerity is not built on the actual behavior, but on our interpretation of that behavior. And also our gut feeling is that automatic response, that learned response and interpretation of behavior. So our gut feeling may serve us super well within our own cultural context, and that could be corporate culture, that could be, you know, middle class, internationally well-traveled people, but it may not serve us outside our cultural context. And there we have to be more careful. So what can we do to make our gut feeling, our sincerity more effective? To be more like Groucho Marx, as John said, not really to fake it, but to kind of interpret it in a way and then adapt to it that others understand us how we want to be understood in different culture. So it's not the 10 points that you need to learn. It's more tricky. We need to observe behavior. Yeah, exactly. It's to show empathy, Barbara, but how can we do that? We observe the behavior and we state the behavioral facts. What does this person do or say? And then we find beyond our own interpretation that's disrespectful, that's, you know, that's invasive, we go to other possible interpretations. So observe the behavior, find as many positive interpretations as possible, test those interpretations, you know, either ask an expert, I will always call it a cultural spy, you know, someone that you can ask, or, you know, read on it or ask a direct question. And then once you've found of all the possible positive interpretations that you found, select one that you want to test with the person that you have in front of you. And when it's coherent and you find it holds, you can act on it. How does that sound? Barbara goes like, not so sure.
Not easy, not easy to combine all these things together.
No, it's certainly not easy, but it's the only way. Yeah, that's what empathy is, really understanding and going the other way, outside of our box. So let's look at some British cultural differences and behaviors that we find puzzling. Yeah? To see how we can then interpret them in new ways and adapt to them. Yeah? Are you ready for a movie? Robin? Yes? Okay, so get your popcorns out, your beer or your aperitivo or your tea with milk, whatever is more to your liking. Aaron will share with you a scene from the 2012 Olympic opening scene. Many of you will have seen it. I've lived and I was there, so I love it. What I want you to do now is, however, not just to sit back, enjoy and eat the popcorn, but to actually maybe take pen and paper or write down on your iPhone or your Samsung or whatever you have and note down exact behavior. What do you see that people do or say? And what, especially behavior that you think is particularly British, yeah? And then afterwards, once we've seen it, we'll go through it and see what we find very British and talk about and see if we can kind of put it together to in terms of values and talk about it. Are you guys ready? Enjoy. Okay. So, what do you think was particularly British about it? Thank you, Robin. You stood up to the Queen. That's correct.
Noted 7 things.
Yeah, Henry, shoot. Let me know.
The Grenadier Guards outside Buckingham Palace.
Mm-hmm.
The Queen's Corgis. London Bus.
Mm-hmm.
Churchill. Big Ben. St. Paul's.
Mm-hmm.
Tower Bridge and James Bond is number 7.
Okay.
007.
So all the things you noticed are symbols of British culture. Yeah.
Also the Olympics for when there were the Olympic Games on Tower Bridge.
Okay, the Olympics. So now what would be behavior that you think was British?
The sense of humor, the incredible sense of humor.
Mm-hmm.
That's British.
What was humorous about it? They never laughed in this.
Well, that's exactly the point, and that's what you have to laugh to understand the humor.
Okay. So the British humor of being serious and not being serious.
Exactly.
Yeah?
Like James Bond having to cough like he does with Anne. The Queen turning round, oh, Mr. Bond, which is normally what the Bond villain says.
Okay, so very subtle double plays, because I was talking after the Olympic ceremony with a lot of my friends from Asia, and they didn't notice any of that, but the Brits did not care about it because they're so in love with their own sense of humor that they love this double plays on it. Okay, Elena, what did you see?
There's something about breaking rules. James Bond takes a taxi, which is already weird. All the children run up to the window to see what's going on. He walks in uncontested. You know, he can break the rules.
So breaking rules and all these movements. Yeah. Anything else you noticed in terms of behavior?
May I say the affection for the institution, for the Queen, or the patriotism, I don't know how to call it.
Yeah, so the affection for the institution, for the monarchy, and for the Queen in particular. No?
Yeah.
What else?
An obsession with the Second World War, dam busters.
The dam busters, yeah, exactly. What is it about this?
The underlying amusement of what was obviously absurd of her parachuting into the arena.
Mm-hmm.
I found that quite amusing.
Yeah. So it's showing how serious they are about something like the institution of the monarchy and the Queen by not taking it serious. And then also Barbara was pointing out the rolling corgis, you know, kind of, and how the presenter then said, "Oh, that's so good of them." Love for it. So this is one of the key values of the Brits that's super important for them themselves, is a sense of humor. Huh? And how is this sense of humor being built? I can see you, Robin. So what's this build upon? So being serious by not being serious. What else?
I think it's built on laughing at yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But
the importance of not being earnest. Yeah. The importance of not being earnest, and definitely not being pompous and show off. Huh?
It's absurdity, which is very prevalent in British humour.
Mm-hmm.
From Monty Python's Flying Circus and way before, from the Goons, etc. It's the absurdity that brings the humour.
Yeah, it's very absurdity and really poking fun, as Mary said, at oneself. The importance of not being earnest goes together with the, you know, of poking fun at oneself, which also is linked to the avoidance of embarrassment. Socially awkwardness is just the worst thing that could possibly happen. And to avoid that, Brits often start with a joke or with kind of a self-depreciating humor when they introduce themselves. Yeah. So how do other people, when we now want to react and seem sincere, kind of what kind of behavior, what do we need to do to completely break the sincerity rule for Brits? What would be the exact opposite of British humor? What would be the worst thing we can do?
Be too serious and too literal.
Exactly. Taking everything literally. Be very serious.
Not having a sense of humor.
Well, there are lots of different senses of humor. Like there is no common sense. Yeah, common sense is remarkably uncommon, and humor is very different. There are lots of different styles. So, but maybe not making fun of oneself or not being able to make fun of oneself. Huh?
I mean, it's quite an insult in England to say someone's got no sense of humor.
Totally, is the worst. They don't want to deal with you anymore. This parrot is dead, as in one of Monty Python's movies. And it's quite tricky if you are overly passionate and overly sure of yourself.
Yes,
Yeah?
British don't like bragging.
Exactly. Show off and pompousness and passion. Yeah. I remember at the big International Coach Federation conference in London, we had one American speaker opening up and saying, "Hey, people, look around. How many intelligent coaches do we have here? The best coaches are gathering. Isn't that fantastic?" What do you think the reaction of the British coaches that were around me was?
A lot of bullshit.
Yeah, when he was like, "Oh, look, my hair is so shiny." No one could take him serious. Yeah. So, kind of, how do you avoid then embarrassment, and how can you be taken serious in the UK, in Great Britain? In your introduction, when you introduce yourself, but you need to get across what you know, or who you are, or how good your service is, to establish that trust, that sincerity feeling.
You might start with a little joke of which you are the loser, as it were, a little bit of a joke about yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You have to get the audience on your side, so you have to have them a little bit laughing at you.
Mm-hmm.
Acknowledging somebody else, acknowledging the people you're speaking to.
Okay, so how would you acknowledge them and saying that's the best, we have the best speaker on culture here?
I wouldn't say that.
No, because everyone goes, I know someone who's much better. You know?
No, simply addressing them, calling out their name. I see so and so here, like you did earlier when John Law connected, that you acknowledged his presence. It made it's that British welcoming kind of mode, which we all appreciate.
Okay, connecting individually. Okay, so poking fun at yourself, self-depreciating humor that lets other people know how good you are. You know, if anyone asks me, are you a good skier? I would say, oh, well, you know, I grew up in the mountains, so I can get down a hill. So I'm giving the context that I grew up in the mountain that helps you understand that, yes, I've been there, but I'm also not saying, you know, I'm the greatest skier on earth. No? So it's creating a context that allows other people to understand your self-depreciating humor. So you give them something that aids the knowledge, but you're not putting yourself at the center because you're showing up, but not showing off. And another thing, so the introduction is going to make a joke, break the ice, be serious, but not take yourself serious, and avoid embarrassment by also not setting too many expectations, usually. Is there anything else, you know, I'm particularly looking at the Brits, that you want to add?
I would add something. I would ask, am I on? You can hear me, yeah. I want you to explain, for example, our Prime Minister, Boris, when he makes a comment like, I would like my French friends to prenez un grip and donnez-moi un break. I mean, to us in Britain, that's an incredible, it's just sense of humor. It's just a funny comment. I'm not sure how that went down.
Do we have anyone French here? But from what I heard, it wasn't.
He wouldn't have said it if it wasn't going to go down really well in the UK. But again, that's a sense of humor. That's just a British sense of humor. I mean, is this whole session about how to get in with the British? Is that what we're working? No, I don't understand.
We're working more on understanding, you know, how we can build trust across the Brits and understand the British mindset. So one is competence. And, you know, you all have to build competence on on your services, on your values, or, you know, your person. One is reliability. And that is something statistically we show. And the other one is that feeling of sincerity. How can we come across as sincere.
To the British, is this what this is about?
Yeah.
I wouldn't use Boris as an example because he is not an honest man.
No.
Well, I want to steer away from that discussion because I'm not sure how well that works in that setting.
As an example for anything at the moment.
Exactly. Let's use a different example, and I know it may not be a very appreciated example for the British amongst us, but another distinctive value that creates often a misunderstanding, at least in the work that I do when I work with both sets of culture in the same room, and is the notion of fairness. Yeah.
The British have a sense of fair play, I thought.
Exactly.
And that's
and the Italians don't.
Well, I find it a bit less. They don't have such a sense of fair play the same way as the British do. It's different. It's just different. I'm advanced over somebody else. Not fair play.
So what's this British sense of fair play?
Things should be probably fairly equal. Nobody should try and get an advantage over somebody else.
Okay. So let's use this example.
Try joining a queue in Italy. Try explaining to Italians the idea of a queue. There's number one.
So after having lived in Italy and Brazil, I got to the UK, and there was a long queue at the bus stop. I lived just outside of Cambridge in a village called Histon, so I had to take the bus into Cambridge, and I joined the queue. I was heavily pregnant. Yeah. But I was the third person in line. Did I get on the bus first?
You should have.
Why should I? I was the third person.
Sorry, were places restricted in any way?
Nope.
Would it have been any inconvenience you to walk onto the bus?
You mean, yeah, at that stage it was usually quite full because we were already close to Cambridge.
Yes, it depends on who were the two people ahead of you and their manners.
Yeah.
Yes, I don't have enough picture here to see what you're driving at.
No, so the thing is, or in the post office, in the British post office, yeah, there's one queue. You come, you get your ticket, and then you're being served. Yeah, no matter if you're old, young.
What ticket? I don't see tickets in the British post office.
No, in the sense of first come, first served basis. There are lines. There's not a ticket like there are lines. So I get in line, I can't jump the queue. Yeah. In Brazil, there are different queues for elderly people, for pregnant people. So which system is fairer?
I mean,
Robin, we can't hear you.
There are not that many pregnant people, or that they have separate queues in England. Maybe there's a smaller population, but people will let a pregnant person sit down or go first. We see that on the trains all the time. But then also, let's not forget, there are a lot of people who aren't British anymore in the UK. So manners are changing as well.
It's not about manners. It's more about the conception of fairness. Yeah. In the fairness in the UK or in Britain is based on equality. We're all starting equal. Yeah. No matter what your situation is, there's one universal law, which is usually super simple. which is why paying taxes in the UK is so easy, because there are only a few simple rules, not like in Italy. Yeah. So there are few simple rules that are valid for everyone. First come, first serve, point. Can we make exceptions? Yes. But in general, the feeling is this is a rule in order to upkeep the system that needs to stay as it is. If we start breaking this rule too often, the whole system breaks down and there's no fairness anymore. Then there's the other version of fairness, where it's not one rule for everyone, but it's what's fair for you in your situation and in your context. So if you're in more need, we should adapt more to you. If you're in a hurry, you should be able to go first if you can make me understand what your hurry and your emergency is. That's fair. Huh?
If you can make people understand.
Exactly. And this is that's exactly where the difficulty lies. Yeah. So in cultural terms, it's called a universalist culture. So one rule valid for everything in extreme terms, and the other one is called the particularism rule. Kind of rules depend on the particular situation that a person is in. In general, we would say that Italy is more a particularist rule. Yeah. If you get me to understand how important or how urgent your request is, then I will serve and I will break the general rules if it serves you well. Yeah.
Will let me know how many contacts you have and how your uncle is really important, then we'll break the rule.
That could be factors that make you understand how important my situation is. Yeah. But then also in the supermarket, when you have, people kind of with the supermarket trolley's in Italy, kind of, all crash towards the same line and go in. And then one says, oh, I have to pick up my baby in the kindergarten and I'm already super late. Then you find an amazing lot of people who say, well, you go ahead. That doesn't happen in Austria.
It would happen in the UK. I have no problem with that. People say frequently, excuse me, I'm in a hurry. Or if you see someone who's got only one item or two items, you say, please go ahead. I've seen that both in Italy and in the UK.
You've seen it, but the responsibility lies somewhere else. In Italy, in a particularist culture, it's my responsibility to make you understand my particular situation, to make you understand my urgency. And in the UK, it's my responsibility to read the room and understand who has a particular situation. Yeah. So I find more likely, for example, in the UK, when I queue at Waitrose, that someone will turn around and say, oh, you only have two things. Do you want to go ahead? Yeah. But if someone says, oh, I have only two things, can I go ahead? Brits tend to go, yeah, go, but they scoff at the person. So if I say, look, I have only two things, can I go ahead? Yeah. They will let you go ahead, but it's not, thing to do. It's just two ways of fairness based on an understanding of how our system works. Huh? If we're using the diversity, inclusion, equity terms, particularism is more equity-based with my responsibility to make you understand what my situation is so that you can be fair to me. In the UK, it's all about being equal and having an equal starting point, and it's the other's responsibility to understand where I need to be helped. Which is why in the tube in the UK, pregnant people often have stickers saying I'm pregnant. Have you not seen that, Mary?
No.
Oh, you were lucky you didn't have to commute. Spent hours in the train. Yeah, because it helps other people to understand that I have certain needs.
Right, saying I want special treatment, and I'm hoping you're going to react to it,
but I'm not going to enforce it. Well, in a particular culture, I will be more active about it because that's what I've grown up and learned how to deal with it.
I would only add to what Robin said earlier on, and that is that I find I am more often saying you go ahead than having it said to me.
If I would not, I couldn't go through a doorway before a lady in either coming towards me or there. The number of times Italian ladies have thanked me with some level of astonishment that I would stand and hold the door for them. And I think, what did you imagine I was going to do? You know, I'm astonished. I couldn't possibly have done anything else. And then there's, you know, I've seen some levels of astonishment at it.
Robin, if you maybe think less about manners, but more on situation where you need to get something done. Yeah.
Mm.
If I'm in the Comune di Milano and I need to get some papers done, which sometimes happens, then how do you know what the general rules and regulations are?
Well, fairness, which is equity, is first come, first served. If I'm standing in a queue with others and someone comes in, goes straight to the top of the queue with no justification for pregnancy or you know anything else, then they're stealing from me. They're stealing my entitlement to this. That's not fair. That's not in any way equitable.
No, it's more. It's not so much about the first come. It's also about in Italy. There's no. If I want to get some papers done, I can get on the website and see what I need. Yeah, but then when I get there, there may be different papers that they need. Yeah, and then it's up to you to explain why they still should get it done. And when you do that well, it will get done. And it may be faster than in the UK, but only if you explain your particular situation. In Germany, you go on the website, all the rules are there if you have it or not. There's this set of paper and it won't change. When you get to the counter, it won't change. But imagine you don't have a particular piece of paper. There's no explaining the reason why I'm making excuses. It just won't get done because it's one rule, one set of paper. If we start breaking the rules, it's over. Yeah? And it's that distinction that especially in business, and it's not about manners. Maybe I made a mistake kind of using manners as an example. It's that mindset that gets us trapped. That in Latino cultures, I need to make this is why often British and Anglo-Saxons or Germans think that Italians or Brazilians are very pushy because they always explain their situation. Who cares? Those are the papers. Bring those. Don't waste my time by explaining your situation.
Manners maketh man is the motto of the Winchester School.
Yeah.
If I remember rightly, I think it's Winchester.
Don't get me going. I've seen too many schools. Yeah, but it's that concept of what is fair and who's responsible to make life fair. And this is a distinction that I find is very challenging in the relationships between those two cultures. Because it's such a strong, deep ingrained normal.
So who is responsible to make life fair in England or, for example, in Italy? Is it the state?
In England, it's more the system. If I may, if I'm simplifying to the extreme, so please don't hold that to me. It's just to make a point. In England, it's the system that makes life fair. In the UK, in Italy, it's the individual.
Can I?
Elena, yeah.
So for me, a major cultural difference between Italians and Brits is that Italians basically don't believe that the system is fair, can be fair, whereas British people do. British culture, there is a belief that systems are fair. So the idea of trusting, you have to rely on sort of individual help, sort of the help from the people around you in Italy rather than on systems. That's my experience.
Thank you, Elena.
Description.
Oh.
That's a perfect description of it. That in England, people trust the system and in Italy, they don't.
And that comes back to that deep-seated cultural difference. Yeah. Or that is the cultural difference, you can say. So when we're dealing with trust, you know, I don't trust a system. In the UK, I trust the system. Obviously, I also trust the person once I know it and say, hand. But in Italy, it's much more important to have that, to make sure that you are getting your fair deal by making sure you're explaining it. Huh?
I wouldn't want to open a Brexit debate or open the pain. When Chiara and I discussed this, not arguing, you know, over the 5 years, etc., I find that Italians in general have no concept, no weight whatsoever on the word sovereignty. They can't grasp the concept. And Chiara explained to me one day, she said, I've never voted for a politician. I've never voted for a party that's won. Now, in the UK, if you vote solidly Conservative, you win 50% of the time, you lose 50%. But you've got something in the game. In the game, there's some return. And she said to me, you know, because British media, the Sun in particular, and Brexiteers railed against rule by Brussels bureaucrats who are unanswerable, etc. And Chiara said, in general, she would rather trust a Brussels bureaucrat than any of their horrible politicians in Rome who are venal and corrupt. I'm slightly overstating. And that for all the faults of British MPs, and they're there to be found, in general, the Brits have a very solid trust and faith in the political system, even if they want to throw the current lot out and put their own ones in. And it was reflected in Chiara said, well, I would rather trust a Brussels person. You know, sovereignty, what the hell is that? They'll do a better job than our guys. Excuse me.
Yeah, kind of harks back to this universalism. Yeah? One universal system and rule that makes everyone equal, as against to particularism, where I need to make sure that my situation is heard, and everyone understands how unique my situation is, so I can be treated fairly. Okay, I have received, I have to admit, a few messages from Aaron stating that, you know, time is of the essence and, you know, 10 minutes and so on. So I just wanted to ask you before I go completely wild, what you're kind of thinking is, what are some of the insights? What did you enjoy about this conversation? Where, fair enough, I spoke most of the time, so apologies. But anyone who knows me knows how much I like to talk. So,
Thank you, Elisabeth. No, I didn't want to cut you off because I found it extremely interesting, and I'm sure the others too. However, some people had to hop off to move on to the next Zoom call. From my part, what I found extremely interesting was this idea of two. The difference between the universalist and the particularist, which I had never considered, and I think it makes a big difference. I was aware instead of the use of humor and other aspects of British culture that really become helpful in terms of developing trust.
Cool. Thank you, Aaron.
I think you made us reflect extremely well.
Thank you, Henry.
Interesting seeing the James Bond, and afterwards all the things which you noticed, which other people noticed that you hadn't noticed, but were all in there as little symbols. Mm-hmm. That was really interesting.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah, to see how different people notice different things, and when you start thinking about it, you become more aware of it, and that's the observation that helps us to become more fluent in better at creating that sincerity. Thank you, Andrew.
I'm obliged to repeat the line, to see ourselves as others see us. Thank you.
Thank you. So we started with that and we're closing with it. Fantastic.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to listen to you.
Thank you for your active participation. So it wasn't just me, I'm grateful for that. So I'm happy to stay online for a little longer if you want to continue to chat, but I'm otherwise very aware that it is time for the Italian aperitivo, the nice thing, the thing that I love the most. And so do enjoy. It's been great to see you. Some of you new, others that I haven't seen in a long time. So fantastic. Thank you. Misbehave and enjoy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Elisabeth.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Very short but interesting journey. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Good evening. Bye.
I'll close by saying I'm very pleased to have met you.
It's been my pleasure, Henry.
Right.
And
I have to feed the dog.
okay.
Of course. One of the things I noticed during the 007 video was the dogs and the black shoes. I was reminded, how important.
The black shoes with leather soles.
Absolutely, yeah.
I think you said many interesting. Well, you mentioned many interesting points that I already know and that I was already aware of, but the links that you made between them are new, so that is very interesting for reflection. The links between them.
It's in the links, the magic,
The links.
Margarita. It's how we link things together, that we get different pictures, how we link the dots together,
Yes.
and we can change our pictures.
Mm-hmm. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Very interesting.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks once
Thank
more.
you, and it's been a pleasure meeting you, Robin's partner in crime.
She only married me to get a British passport, and now she's looking forward to getting a Scottish passport. When I get mine, I'm going to sell it on eBay. I'm going to make a ton of money.
Absolutely.
You're not here to enjoy yourself. Stop laughing.
I'm not British enough.
Bye.
Ciao.
Bye, everyone. Speak soon.